Dear friends, good afternoon, good morning. We are happy to welcome all of you at our seminar. It is an international scientific research seminar, The Secret Doctrine by Elena Petrovna Blavatsky. We are happy that all of you could connect today from different parts of the world. Despite the current situation, we are happy to see you at the seminar and we start our work. We are sure that today, united together, we'll be able to detect the essence of the study, the second so-called second stanza, will reveal the truth and will help our participants, our listeners, and provide them with the material which will help them to continue studies by themselves. The studies of the secret doctrine by Elena Petrovna Blavatsky. We are happy to welcome you, dear friends. And today we are studying the second stanza of the second sloka.
According to our tradition, I give the floor to Vladimir Vasilievich Yary, the head of Moscow School of Theosophy, president of the Adamant Lodge, Theosophical Society of Russia. Greetings to everybody, dear friends. At the end of this powerful month of February, marked by major events, February is the month when the new era creates new astral body. Which means the new energies are to be sensed. They will be conditioned by our consciousness. Our thinking process should operate with new categories, unusual ones, which will establish the new understanding of reality.
Здоровье наибольшее
Elena Petrovna gives us the idea that the health is the most precious thing for the human body, and that truthfulness is the most virtue of the human soul. And Helena Petrovna gives us the polarity of our comprehension of the world. And of course, those two aspects, healthy body and our virtues, our spiritual quality spirit. We have the century of white dragon, and now we are in the era of Aquarius. So the age of white dragon tells us about completed wisdom.
But why is it completed? First of all, it's the element ether. This element is the one of the primordial form in which the builders came to this earth.
And at this point, a descent is to this completion. This completion is the beginning. Just as the connection of causes and consequences in what is manifested contains the essence. And this essence is given to the humanity so that we can realize and understand the essence of things, or the essence of essence. The year of the black tiger. Tiger is the symbol of birth, and black color represents the element of water, or akasha, which is the essence. And its essence is translated as the birth of new person, of a new man, the rebirth of its potential, of the potentiality of new possibilities, new skill, new opportunities. what is being open and inborn, the memory. It is a very important point. This year is very important. And this year, we will always hear, if our attention is focused right way, we will hear about this, about new birth, the birth of new relationship, because in the relationship is our happiness. The month of the white Taurus, the white bull, again, the completion of ignorance, or completed realization, the understanding or catching of our ignorance. This detail is crucial. We used to have a year of white bull just last year, which we lived the 12 months of the year, and now all 12 months will be concentrated in this white bull. In what 1 month, everything is concentrated here. Can you imagine that? How clear we should understand our ignorance, because from this point, the potentiality, the aspiration to knowledge arises, comes out, awakening the quality of understanding in a man. The week of Black Boar. The Black Boar, as we've said, is the element of water or akasha, or the primordial vibration of the sound. Supposedly, the vibration which will vibrate, which will sound. The black boar is the symbol of consciousness and also the symbol of manifestation of the consciousness. The black color gives us an idea of primordial manifestation of the consciousness, the primordial blueprint, the experience that was accumulated in our soul and that will help us to reveal and manifest the potentiality of our slumbering memory. The day of the blue dog. Dog is a symbol of firmness. The blue color is the symbol of the element air, which means the principle of personality should be an expression of our mental activity. In other words, the dog should learn, or man should learn how to distinguish, how to understand. These are our today's Nidanas, the 26th of February. Thank you very much for your attention, dear friends. Thank you very much. Dear friends, now we know what kind of energies are accompanying our unique day, which is the day of our scientific seminar. And our first speaker, Mr. Narendran, the Theosophical Society of India, the director, educational director of the Virtual Center of Theosophical Studies, Adyar, Mumbai, India.
Warm greetings from Blavatsky Lodge in Mumbai to everybody. It's so lovely to be back with the Secret Doctrine students and teachers together. This togetherness is very important in trying to understand the deeper esoteric meaning of the wisdom that we are trying to pursue. So I think this is a fantastic opportunity to participate. And today we have stanza 2, Sloka 2 from the Secret Doctrine. Well, I'm actually going to read my lecture to facilitate the translation. So let us get into the Secret Doctrine, stanza 2, Sloka 2. Well, I'm not trying to read the the Sloka as such, because you may possibly be aware of it. But then as we go with the narrative, you will understand what we are trying to move forward with. This Sloka is a continuation of the narrative on the spiritual aspect of cosmogony, the secret doctrine by Madam Helena Petrovna Blavatsky. Sourced from the ancient texts, among others, the Hindu Puranas, the Brahmanas and Upanishads. The writer probes into the origin of the universe and its coming into being. It's important, coming into being. Her effort has been painstaking, traversing into the trans-Himalayan region of Tibet and by-hearting the ancient texts in a sacerdotal language hidden away from the many. The language, known as Stanza, was a precursor to Sanskrit and no more in usage. She had to by-heart it, most of the information. Many of these ancient wisdom has been archived in the secret books of Lam, Rim, and Dhyan. The books of the QT, which is actually the Tibetan Buddhist Tantras, and the Kalachakra Tantra, and other such texts. The Kalachakra doctrine is considered to be the special domain for the Panchen Lama and his monastery at Tashi Lun Po, located adjacent to the Shigatse. Shigatse reminds us because it is the abode of the Mahatma Kuthumi and Master Moria, who also lived in that area. This is available to us through the travels of Madame Blavatsky herself. In the October 1889 issue of Lucifer, a magazine published by Madame Blavatsky in London, talking about the content in the secret doctrine, she writes, "These emanate from an unbroken oral teaching. Unbroken oral teaching for millions of years, revealed by divine men to a select group of rishis, masters, or sages in the Himalayas. It has been recorded, unaltered, and passed on to humanity to reach them at the appropriate time." That's very important, at the appropriate time, through qualified channels. We need an appropriate time, we need a qualified channel. Through qualified channels, and Madame Blavatsky herself was one such. This forms the archetypal principle of modern theosophy. The ultimate validity lies in each one of us using our intuitive and spiritual perception. That's very important again, to use the faculty of the intuitive and spiritual perception. It is in this background that we need to understand and interpret these slokas. The Sanskrit word nishabd, or without a word, describes the state of the universe at its genesis. As much as we saw, the first palm plate of HPB was all darkness, and then from there emanated a circle of light. In similar analogy, the world was filled with impregnated silence as it emerged from Pralaya to the Manvantara. Theosophy is best understood and closest to the Advaita philosophy from Eastern esotericism, where the only infinite being is the Para-Brahman. All others are a reflection, that too, a Mayic or illusionary reflection, including the Brahma of each universe. So each universe is a Brahma. As much as the darkness As much as darkness is the originator of light, the silence is the originator of sound. To normal human perception or psychology, it may appear as non-being. However, it is the state of absolute being in the esoteric sense. In the Buddhist tradition, Parabrahman is referred as Adi Buddha, and in the Kabbalah as Ein Sof. This state is also referred as Night of Brahma due to the silent physical state of the universe. This concept is clearly defined in the Vishnu Puranas in Sarga, the chapter called Sarga, which is cosmogony, and Pratisarga, which is cosmology. And Manvantara is referred as the cosmic cycle. So this impregnated silence was dynamic. Silence, but dynamic, and not in static state as there was the eternal breath of motion. So how was it dynamic, the eternal breath of motion? We come to that part of the sloka. The concept of eternal breath is well woven in Greek mythology, and Prometheus and how he stole the fire from Zeus to light the consciousness of humanity. Prometheus was punished being tied to a rock where a vulture would peck into his liver every day as it would regrow. In the Hebrew scriptures, it is referred as Ruach or breath of Yahweh. The breath of one existence is the great universal breath of creation. It is synonymous with movement, therefore the dynamics of the universe. The eternal breath, which knows itself not, implies the infiniteness of its being. Here, HPB points out the subtle difference between consciousness, which is finite, and absolute consciousness, which is infinite. Absolute consciousness is the integral unity of the cognizer, the cognized, and the cognition itself. Not knowing is generically described as unconscious, as we are devoid of the experience itself. So anything we are not aware, we say it's unconscious. But in occult wisdom, the unknown or unknowable is the divine, where it exists on its own. The absolute consciousness does not perish or get extinguished even during pralaya as well. So during pralaya, there is neither day nor night, neither earth nor sky, neither darkness nor light. In the Puranas, which HPB makes reference in her narrative, all matters have three inert qualities, or what is described as gunas. Sattva, which is goodness; rajas, passion; tamas, darkness. So it's an integral aspect, sattva, rajas, and tamas. And pradhana is the root matter. Gunas in a mixed but unmanifested state is agitated. And in the case of Mahatattva, matter or universal womb, gunas in both mixed and manifested state. Look at the combinations, how it works. Pradhana, which has no consciousness or will act on its own, is initially agitated by a primal desire to create. So this desire to create is how the universe gets created. From here is created the Jeev, or the manifested subtle elements of this Jivatma. And Jivatma is manifested through Ahamkara, ego, Buddhi, intelligence, and Chitta, mind. So this is the manifestation of the Ahankara. In the Nasadiya hymns, to quote Rig Veda 10/129, in case you would like to refer further, it speaks of the world beginning from nothingness, whether one breath, windless, and then coming into existence through the power of heat. The Sankhya philosophy explanation comes nearer to modern day science explanation. According to the school, the interaction of Purusha and Prakriti produce the universe and matter. Purusha is described as omniscient, omnipresent, and indivisible entity. In other words, absolute consciousness or the soul, anima mundi or the universal soul. HPP also mentions about Prakriti interacting with Purusha to create the universe. This echoes the first law of thermodynamics in modern day physics. Thank you for this opportunity.
Dear Narendran, thank you very much. You know, as Yelena Petrovna noted, the first and second stanzas are very challenging to see the difference between them. It's very difficult to differentiate the slokas, and it is so important that you define the key moments and milestones and got us to perceive certain states of sloka that we haven't mentioned before. You found this new state of being in this states and these energies. And it is wonderful that thanks to you we can feel, perceive these states and be inside. And thank you very much for that. Thank you. We're so grateful. And we continue our seminar. And now we have a guest from St. Petersburg, Chiriatev Mikhail, corresponding member of the International Academy of Ecology and Life Protection Sciences, advisor to the Russian Academy of Natural Sciences, member of the Board of Trustees of the International Roerich Memorial Trust in Kullu, India. Mr. Chiriatev, Russia, St. Petersburg. Please, you're welcome. The floor is yours. Hello, dear colleagues, dear friends. My gratitude for the possibility to participate in this wonderful seminar, for this opportunity. I'm very happy to be here. And since I have a simultaneous translation, I will also read my lecture so that it is easier for our English-speaking colleagues. Commenting on the sloka, Elena Petrovna Blavatsky says, existence as water may be said to be for oxygen and hydrogen a state of non-being, which is more real being than their existence as gases. And it may faintly symbolize the condition of the universe when it goes to sleep or ceases to be during the nights of Brahma, to awaken or reappear again when the dawn of the new Manvantara recalls it to what we call existence. In this case, Yelena Petrovna once again shows creative skill using comparisons and analogies in order to explain particular examples from more universal ones and then from them to others like them again to ascend to the awareness of general, more essential concepts. Thus, one should study different degrees and qualities of the connections of the microcosm and microcosm, the reflection of higher principles, plans, and entire worlds in the lower comprehend the manifestations of more universal laws in the limited conditions of the earth's existence. The energetic world, writes Helena Roerich, justify the ancient philosophers who claim that matter is a crystallized spirit, or that spirit is a sublimated matter. Hydrogen and oxygen combine according to the numerical law of correspondence, a stoichiometric mixture of 2 to 1 mole forms an explosive gas, which activates the chemical affinity from the spark, which leads to an explosion. So to say, the fire transmutation or chain reaction that turns the atoms that make up water into latent ones. Teachers, speaking about atoms of different gradations of omnipresent matter, mean animated conscious centers of life, reasonable at their level of being, and their combinations can already show some semblance or sensation. When creating a molecular substance, solar fire or light is converted into heat. It is grouped into fiery particles, which, when cooled, forms atoms. The higher minds, following the law of numbers, bring these atomic flows into form. In this case, the foretic forces of affinity, cohesion, expansion, expulsion act, and differentiated atoms are transformed into a molecular substance. Spiritual boutique energy, involving the spirit, soul, and body of numbers, geometry, shape, and space, brings atoms from the plane of pure energy to the plane of more condensed substance. Thus, the universal soul is embodied to atomic substance. Therefore, water from philosophical views consists of united souls. Different types of energies, forces, and material planes pass from one form of energy or substance to another, acting according to geometric and mathematical laws. Our dense world with its biosphere is animated by such universal symphony of fiery energies, in which sound vibrations become color, atomic vibrations become molecular ones, and the fiery world associated with atomic energies organized in the subtle world is conductors associated with molecular ones. In other words, the principle of buddhi, the sphere of spiritual desires and high energies of thought, is reflected to its conductor Kamarupa, whose manasic forces and desires of the lower four planes of manifestation seek to restore the obscure plenity of the form with the high energies, entering the Antakarana bridge, which unites the divine ego with the human one. But thought itself is a bridge between the higher and lower planes, or between the spirit and the matter. Through this bridge, the higher forces and fires descend, and the purified earthly emanations and desires ascend upwards to the higher self, to the fifth manas plane. The pure energies and substance of a person allow the higher light of the fifth plane, the higher manas, to enlighten and illuminate the lower mind. Thus, the spiritual may go into the final to open the gates to the ascent of the consciousness of a spiritually aspiring person to heaven the Father. Yelena Petrona Blavatsky says consciousness implies limitations and qualifications, something to be conscious of, and some of the conscious of it. But absolute consciousness contains the cognizer, the thing cognized, and the cognition, all three in itself and all three one. No man is conscious of more than the portion of his knowing that happens to have been recalled to his mind at any particular time. It is no coincidence that the HPB gives an example of the formation of water in the comments to this Sloka. The Theosophy states there can be no form without water, because the water is the principle of desire. The desire spiritualized form, that is the essence of form. It means the essence of desire, the essence of form. So the water is the basis of organization of all form in the vegetable and animal world. No form of plant or animal can come into existence without water as a basis. And this is not merely because of the physical need of water for subsistence, but because of the occult principle of form inherent in the water quality. This law are also valid for the kingdom of minerals and crystals, but we know that gases that form water, hydrogen, oxygen, uh, we mean the protyle, the primal fire, and the kasha. Oxygen corresponds to the element of the first in breath of the fifth inner breath. In human principles, hydrogen refers to kamarupa. Like an animal desire, while it is not fed up, burns in matter during life. Oxygen, in which hydrogen burns, represent an active life force, prana, and supports combustion. On the lowest astral plane, it is manifested by ozone, a very fiery gas, the preparations of which help the breath of higher beings, gods who are forced to descend to our dense world. Hydrogen and oxygen, together with carbon and nitrogen, make up the basis for organic structures in plants, animals, and humans, among others. Speaking about the states of water, it is appropriate to note that ice is associated with the astral light, and when exposed to light and heat, is capable of reflecting on the screen astral images of forms, the outlines of objects imprinted by it, for example, plants previously printed on its surface. The images are preserved until the ice melts. Then Petrona Blavatsky comments on fourth sloka for Stanza in a meeting of the Blavatsky Lodge of the Theosophical Society in 1889, the 3rd of March. In this regard, we can recall The studies of Masaru Emoto on the perception of information by water. He published an illustrated book, Messages from Water, which presents ice crystals of various harmonious and inharmonious, distorted symmetries and structures formed as a result of exposure to water of various positive and negative thoughts and emotions. The methodology of the experiments needs to be improved, but the very trend of such an approach desires attention. At present, 17 crystalline modifications of ice and 3 amorphous ones are known to science. The most common is natural ice, which has a hexagonal structure. In ice, all molecules are linked by hydrogen bonds. The 4 bonds of each molecule are locally organized into uh, tetrahedral structure. These three-sided pyramids can also be combined into a kind of superstructure. In ice, such a complex three-dimensional superstructure of tetrahedra can spread over the entire volume and be modified. The tetrahedron has symbolized the essence of fire since ancient times. The regular uh, polyhedron is the first of the Platonic solids and the simplest building element of three-dimensional forms. A very surprising thing that about the structure of ice is that water molecules at low negative temperatures and high pressures inside nanotubes can crystallize in the form of the double helix similar to DNA. That was proved by computer simulations and experiments of American scientists led by Xiao Cheng-Seng at the University of Nebraska. Vedanta, Theosophy, and living ethics point out there is one element, one atom, which, like fire, can become a multitude. After all, the elements are also personification of one fire. Alchemists also know modifications of fire. It can be gases, as in plasma, ions, liquid, for example, condensal astrolite, and solid, as in some rare meteorites, and even experimentally conducted by our astronauts in space. It is there that called plasma particles begin to line up in crystalline structures under the influence of a magnetic field. Cosmonauts in weightlessness received from microparticles in plasma structures resembling DNA and spiral shapes of galaxies. The properties of plasma crystals and structures are very unusual. Swami Vivekananda, speaking at the First World Parliament of Religions in Chicago in 1893, said, "Science is nothing but the finding of unity. As soon as science would reach perfect unity, it would stop from further progress because it would reach its goal. Thus, chemistry could not progress further when it would discover one element out of which all other could be made. Physics would stop when it would be able to fulfill its services in discovering one energy, of which all others are but manifestations, and the science of religion become perfect when it would discover Him who is the one life in the universe of death, Him who is the constant basis of the ever-changing world, one who is the only soul of which all souls but delusive manifestations. Thus is it through multiplicity and duality that the ultimate unity is reached. Religion can go no farther. This is the goal of all science. All science is bound to come to this conclusion in the long run. Manifestation and not creation is the road of science today, and Hindu is only glad that he has been cherished in the bosom of the ages of going to the thought in more forcible language and with further light with the latest conclusion of science. The living ethics teaching us about the law of unity. Upon oneness stands the entire affirmed beingness. The operating law is so stupendous that all cosmic construction rests upon this principle. In every manifestation, this law assembles the parts, uniting those which belong to each other. The great law is the crown of cosmos. Only a striving atom saturated with the fire of this law can reach the crown of beingness. When an atom saturated with the millennia aspires to reach the crown, then the aspiration leads to completion. When the striving atom is united by the law throughout the millennia, aware of this unity, then the cosmic magnet accomplishes the wide mind. The infinity, part 2. In additional comments to the Sloka, we are considering in response to questions from the Theosophical Society members of the Blavatsky Lodge. HPB said in January 21st, 1889, "You have, first of all fire. Not the fire that burns there, but the real fire that Athanasius talk about, the one flame, the fire of life. On the plane of differentiation, it becomes fire in whatever aspect you like. Fire from friction, or whatever it is fire. Very well. After that, all produces the heat in the liquid, and then you pass through the element of water. Then from the liquid, it becomes gas. Then from the gas, the two gases mix up and produce water. You take simply a drop of water and follow it. When solid, it becomes ice. When ice is liquefied, it becomes water. This water becomes vapor, ether, anything you like, and then it entirely disappears in the universal flame, which, of course, you physicists will not talk about. The universal flame, we call it ether, but follow it like that, and there it is. It is the element which appears to you here, and to say that this gas is not there, or there are two are not there. I should say it is a fallacy. The only thing we can say is that the gases have passed from the plane of objective into the plane of subjective. These reflections of HPB are consonant with the ideas of great founder of Advaita Vedanta, Sri Srakancharya. The ether, Akasha, has risen like a bubble from the Brahman because of the Maya. From the ether came the air, from the air, the fire, and from the fire, the waters, from the waters, the earth came, and from the earth, the grains. The earth dwells in water, the water in fire, the fire in air, the air in the ether. The ether is unmanifested, that is Maya, and Maya is in Brahman. I am the Brahman, Hari. A drop reflects the ocean. Monads of Leibniz are a living mirror of the universe, where every monad reflects every other. Divine mind formed mirrors of the atoms of the world and cast reflections from its own face on every atom. So, thanks to the comprehension of the great teachings, we are given to bring this wise knowledge to life. This is possible to reveal the essential aspects of the uh, processes taking place in different spheres of activity of human communities and the entire planet. After all the teachers and their great messages, like Petrona Blavatsky, came to carry out a shift in the consciousness of people to give the knowledge, to purify the distortions of past teachings, to illuminate the paths of ascent with love, and to help accelerate the spiritual cosmic evolution. Various changes in the states of the nature and society are connected and more subtle levels with the evolutionary laws and the processes that occur due to the action of many cosmic forces. These changes were intensified by the accelerated approachment and convergence of the subtle and fiery world with the manifested world, the shift of the Earth's magnetic axis, new rays of the luminaries that create astrological conditions, including those of social and economical transformations and changes in the life of biosphere and nonosphere. In our time, on the one hand, they bring an increase in vibrations and thereby accelerate evolution and significantly change the life of Earth. But at the same time, they have led many to such level of bringing consciousness down to earth so that people began to resemble prisoners to a plateau of cave who cannot turn their heads and perceive only shadows on the wall. Of course, the degrees of development of the qualities of consciousness over the past cycles of incarnations have created both free people and more voluntary slaves. For many, the forced epidemic restrictions imposed additional bonds to their existing prerequisites for states or consciousness, but for others, they opened up new areas of spiritual creative activity. Nevertheless, many imprisoned ones are waiting, like hydrogen and oxygen in water, until the lighting of alchemical electrolysis releases them from the realization of their potential degrees of freedom and the possibilities of new combinations, new social chemical reactions that are not limited to astral modifications of steam and ice. The cytochemical water saturated with polar forces and their combinations, ideas, and prototypes of future manifested accomplishments ripen, waiting for incarnations as a more real being, which with in the commentary of the Sloka, HPP compared the states of hydrogen and oxygen in water than in gases. However, the infusion of steam in a closed boiler, if it is not released in portions through the valves and not transmute, can lead to explosion, as we observe just right now. Therefore, there are now mass protests against COVID restrictions, outbreaks of center of insanity, polarization of many planetary forces, increase of aggressiveness, military and natural tensions, and disasters, and increase of in migration flows, etc. But the reason for another appearance in our century of New Plato caves are rarely realized. Those began with the imprisonment and distortion of the high energies of culture, which being pure and genuine, capable of producing spiritual transmutation, raising vibrations of radiations and emanations of consciousness, which is necessary for the assimilation of new spatial currents and harmonization of energetic layers in the biosphere and noosphere. Cosmic factors, karmic consequences of many centuries, and three epidemics interconnected with them, destruction of culture, including that which affected the technosphere, mental and biological ones, created the conditions for dividing people according to the consonances of the qualities of consciousness. Entire social strata in its alchemical cauldron are set in motion. They either precipitate or sublimate and purify. Distortion of cultural energies has caused the growth of mental viruses and epidemics. Such negative qualities as ignorance, selfishness, greed, vanity, vulgarity, deceit, hypocrisy have multiplied. Aggressive manifestations and crime have intensified. All this is aggravated with the help of narcotization of consciousness, not only by the various chemical psychedelics, but also with countercultural phenomena popularized by the media, including internet, some specimen of inhuman development of artificial intelligence, medicine, and other fruits of inanimate science and false values as pseudo-art. The lower strata of the astral world actively began to infiltrate the darkened consciousness of the embodied ones at the lower psychism in criminal, magic, and priest. But the common evolutionary terms require humanity to move to a new higher level of spiritual development. Explosions take place because those who are not ready to break the chains of the consciousness, to chain them to ground, will not be able to take it. The gate of the higher worlds are open to men. Fiery purification takes place when a spiritualized heart receive any cosmic vibrations calling to extent of the spirit. The spiritual fire unites subtle energies and directs towards more uh, sublime, creative persons through Satya Yoga. The teaching of fire yoga states increased. Indeed, the very consciousness strives toward the fire principle, which the lower one creates, the higher image in its own likeness. The capacity of the small consciousness will determine the created image. Hence, so many obvious distortions. How it is possible to feel a small consciousness with a universal concept, with all comprehensiveness, leads the spirit to a frenzy. I say, distressing grievous is human thinking. A special horizon is accessible only to him who knows the universal of the principle, for the kindly spirit can merge with the higher principle precisely at the microcosmos merges with microcosm. Hence, a small spirit cannot merge with the fire principle. Fiery power reveals the entire furnace manifested to him who senses the pulse of the fiery world. The life-giving principle builds life upon Boha. Thus, let us remember that only a small consciousness denies, but the fire spirit is all-comprehending. On the path to the fire world, let us remember about the good principle. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chiriatev, Mikhail Nikolaevich. You've given us so much information in this short, condensed form, and we would like to stay within stanza, if possible. Stanza second, sloka second. It's very important. It is important that out of this one element, you could lead correspondences with the fire world and give the social, moral, and spiritual assessment of what is going on today in our time. And this is very important. We hope that these correspondences will find the right ears, will find understanding within our participants. Stanza second, sloka second. And we continue our seminar, The Secret Doctrine, and we are waiting for our colleague from Portugal. Uh, we are talking about the president of Lusitanian Center of Cultural Unity, Portugal, Mr. Anacleto. Mr. José Manuel Anacleto, you're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, Theosophist sisters and brothers. Greetings from Portugal. I am very, very happy to be with you again. As it had been suggested, I will make a brief comment on Sloka 2 of Stanza 2 of the book of Dzyan, Basis of the Secret Doctrine by Elena Petrovna, that reads thus: Where was silence? Where the ears to sense it? No, there was neither silence nor sound, not save ceaseless eternal breath, in absoluteness, which is beyond any condition and relative existence, even that of a cosmos of great vastness. There is really no distinctions. The causes of existence had been done away with. The visible that was and the invisible that is rest in eternal non-being, the one being, as explained in Stanza 1, Sloka 7. So, in the absoluteness, subject and object, and manifested, spirit and matter, silence and sound, light and darkness are absolute unity. Without subject differentiated from the object, nor mind awake to diversity, universal mind was not, for there were no ahi to contain it. We can read in Sloka 3 of Stanza 1, remembering that the ahi are the Dianshowans, or the angelic hosts of the so-called monotheistic religions. I will repeat, for there's a lot of texts between parentheses. Without subject differentiated from the object, nor mind awake to diversity, there is no consciousness as we conceive it, and which presuppose duality and relation, but rather unconsciousness, which is absolute, unlimited consciousness. Alone, the one form of existence, stressed, boundless, infinite, causeless, in dreamless sleep, and life pulsated and conscious in universal space, as it is written in the first stanza, Sloka 8. As HPB wrote, in the occult teachings, the unknown and the unknownable mover, or the self-existing, is the absolute divine essence. And thus being absolute consciousness and absolute motion, to the limited senses of those who try to describe this indescribable, it is unconsciousness and unmovableness. Concrete consciousness cannot be predicated of abstract consciousness any more than the quality wet can be predicated of what. Wetness being its own attribute and the cause of the wet quality in other things. Conscious implies limitations and qualification, something to be conscious of and someone to be conscious of it. But absolute consciousness contains the cognizer, the thing cognized, and the cognition, all free in itself and all free one. No man is conscious of more than that portion of his knowledge, that happens to have been recalled to his mind at any particular time. The Secret Doctrine, Volume 1, page 55. Curiously enough, the former speakers who talk before me also quote part of this test, which shows we are in deep affinity. So let's follow. As the logoic potency lies dormant, it does not contrast with the great, great silence, nor does it evidence silence. So, in that sense, effectively, there was neither silence nor sound. And, as we can read in Stanza 1, Sloka 5, darkness alone filled the boundless all. But in the domain of manifestation, we think that silence is greater than sound, with which it contrasts, just as absoluteness is higher than the logos or word, or than any universe that comes into existence. Before sound, there is silence. Before light, the darkness of the great and manifested, of the great abysm. Silence is superior to music and to any kind of sounds, for before everything else, it was and it is silence, the unmanifest Father, the first Logos, and only then does the word act. If the word or external Logos is the synthesis of the universe or of the manifested universes, that which is beyond the duality silence sound, i.e. absoluteness, Parabrahman, is more than that. It is all there is and all there is not for us. It is all that has been, is, and will be manifested, and also that which will never be manifested. It is everything that is possible, and even more, the overcoming of all limitations and of all there is illusion, appearance, and temporariness. I think 99 times and discover nothing. I stop thinking, plunge into deep silence, and behold, the truth reveals itself to me, said Albert Einstein, himself a student of the Secret Doctrine. In fact, we may say, every truth can only be contemplated face to face in the recollection of our inner silence. Although previously and externally considered, analyzed, and assessed, only within ourselves can we know and understand it in its essential purity. Once it has been drawn into our will and loved to the extent of its understanding, it can and must then be harmoniously called forth. Silence is a friend who never betrays, asserted Confucius. We completely agree with him. So, let us listen to the silence that tells us that life palpitates in us, as it palpitates in all beings, filling all space and governing everything by the same universal laws. All expressions of life are drops of this immense ocean of being, and the ocean, which is common, is no less real than each of its drops. The destiny of each drop is, while remaining a drop, to become an ocean. In understanding this truth, which was enunciated thousands of years ago, but is rarely attained, lies the foundation of peace, of true peace, which is identification with the cosmic rhythm, which is the balance of giving and receiving, which is the consummation of being, which is the fullness of life. Jesus responded with silence when he was asked what the truth is. Remember the Gospel according to St. John 18:38. Could there be a more eloquent and accurate and suggestive answer than that silence? There was also the silence of the Buddha when he was asked the question Atman and Atman, i.e., there's a self or there's not a permanent self. Or when in the famous discourse in which he held a lotus flower, he led one of his disciples to enlightenment without uttering a single word. Really, in deep silence, only in silence, in the emptiness there is full, only in the emptiness there is full, in the nothing there is all, only in the nothing there is all, there is freedom. But let us return to Stanza 2 and this Sloka 2. Then, what was there in that state so subtle that we can hardly distinguish from total and manifestation? It is explained to us. Not save ceaseless eternal breath, which knows itself not. This breath of the one existence is the num of what we call motion in our material world. It is the one life, eternal, invisible, yet omnipresent, without beginning or end, yet periodical in its regular manifestations, between which periods reigns the dark mystery of non-being. Unconscious, yet absolute consciousness, unrealizable, yet the one self-reality. Its one absolute attribute, which is itself eternal, ceaseless motion, is called in esoteric parlance the great breath, which is the perpetual motion of the universe. We can read in The Secret Doctrine, Volume 1, page 2. And where does it breathe? In the one eternal element, or element containing vehicle, which is space, dimensionless in every sense, coexistent with which are endless duration, primordial, hence indestructible matter and motion, Madame Blavatsky comments in The Secret Doctrine, Volume 1, page 55. This corresponds to the elaboration of the first proposition of The Secret Doctrine, namely where HPB clarifies that beingness is symbolized in The Secret Doctrine under two aspects. On the one hand, absolute abstract space, the one thing which no human mind can either exclude from any conception or conceive of by itself. On the other, absolute abstract motion, representing unconditioned consciousness. See Volume 1, page 14. If, however, we wish to bring these lofty metaphysical conceptions a little closer to us, we may recall what Elena Blavatsky wrote on page 492 of the second volume of the same book. The Secret Doctrine points out as a self-evident fact that mankind collectively and individually is, with all manifested nature, the vehicle, A, of the breath of one universal principle in its primal differentiation, and B, of the countless breaths proceeding from that one breath in its secondary and further differentiations, as nature with its many mankind's proceeds downwards toward planes that are ever increasing in materiality. The primary breath informs the higher hierarchies, the secondary, the lower, on the constantly descending planes. On our part, we would also add and conclude that space, much higher than just physical space, is unlimited, and that each location, each locus, each logos of the consciousness is one of the infinite macro and microcosmoses which are possible therein. Life and consciousness are omnipresent and without gaps. Our consciousness creates and recreates and fades away the manifested worlds, both the big and the small cosmoses. The continuity of consciousness is truly the key to the great mysteries. Peace and light to all beings. Thank you for your attention.
Dear Jose Anacleto, thank you very much for your research, for this sensitivity, for this subtle ideas that you try to convey us through the interpretation of the silence and the sound of silence. And we continue our scientific research seminar, and I'm giving the floor to Luke Michael Ironside, the Theosophical Society of Philippines, Director of the Virtual Center of the Theosophical Studies at Adyar, London, UK. Dear Luke, the floor is yours. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here once again as we continue our studies now into the second stanza, second sloka of the Secret Doctrine. So to begin by restating the sloka, where was silence? Where were the ears to sense it? No, there was neither silence nor sound, naught save ceaseless eternal breath, motion, which knows itself not. And in the commentary on this sloka, we find the quote from Madame Blavatsky that the idea that things can cease to exist and still be is a fundamental one in Eastern psychology. And it's interesting quite how foreign this idea is to the Western mind, this idea that there must be a forced dichotomy between being and non-being, that the two are somehow at odds with one another and cannot be reconciled or cannot be unified. But what we find in the Eastern mindset throughout Eastern philosophy is that this contradiction does not exist, that being and non-being are in fact in the fundamental essence one and the same. And so at the central idea of this sloka is that prior to the emergence of this universe, from the slumber of pralaya, there was naught but the absolute in its state of non-being, wrapped in the sleep of the cosmic night. Other than that, there was not, either real or apparent. It is in this state of non-being that all varieties of past and future existence are drawn back into the consciousness of the Absolute, to remain for incalculable aeons in a state of latency and repose. In this state, existence as such ceases to be, and yet the potentiality of all existence remains latent within the mind of the Absolute. And there we see how, in very simple words, how this apparent contradiction is solved in occult philosophy. Being and non-being, in fact, are concepts which arise from a dualistic perspective of life, a necessarily dualistic perspective, but a dualistic perspective nonetheless. In reality, in the fundamental essence, there is only the Absolute, Parabrahm, beingness, which is both absolute being and non-being. To quote again from the commentary from Madame Blavatsky, to know itself or oneself necessitates consciousness and perception, both limited faculties in relation to any subject except Parabrahm, to be cognized. Hence, the eternal breath which knows itself not. Infinity cannot comprehend finiteness. The boundless can have no relation to the bounded and the conditioned. In the occult teachings, the unknown and the unknowable mover, or the self-existing, is the absolute divine essence. And what we find in this discussion of the eternal breath or motion which knows itself not, and other references throughout the secret doctrine to motion and consciousness, is that motion and consciousness are in essence one. They refer to one and the same thing. Motion cannot exist without consciousness, and neither can consciousness exist without motion. They are both products of one another. In the Theosophical worldview, there is no dead or still matter. The seeming emptiness of space is, in fact, teeming with life, consciousness, and motion. So it's interesting to see that even in the apparent emptiness, even in the apparent condition of non-existence, there is still some spark or essence of life and consciousness. Motion may be conceived of as the underlying principle that is fundamental to the countless varieties of life in the universe. The cosmos is itself a living, breathing, moving manifestation of the Logos, with motion being its intrinsic characteristic. These eternal cycles of cosmic activity, which we are discussing in our examination of the first and second stanzas, those of Manvantara and of cosmic sleep or pralaya, are symbolized in the secret doctrine by this term, the great breath or the eternal breath, here in this sloka also referred to by the term motion. There is a cyclic outbreathing of manifestation, during which life takes on form and shape, and grows and evolves, and a period of inbreathing, in which all the great and vast diversities of life return to the primal state of unity in the darkness of pralaya. And it is this state, this return to this condition of non-existence or pralaya, of unmanifestation, that we are here examining and here trying to wrap our minds around and to comprehend in an examination of these first two stanzas. This eternal cycle of Manvantara and Pralaya, this eternal breath, is a fundamental principle of motion in the cosmos. And so just as the consideration of the duality or the apparent duality of being and non-being results in dualism, in the understanding of life as not as a unity, but in a dualistic perspective, so too does a consideration of absolute motion result in a revelation of the limitations of language and dualistic thoughts. The distinctions, or the seeming distinctions between the mover and the moved, result in paradoxes that seem to stifle philosophic reflection on the nature of the universe. However, this paradox is removed when viewed in the light of Theosophy, which postulates the absolute as an ever-becoming and at the same time an absolute unity. The same understanding also resolves this issue of being and non-being, for if the absolute is ever becoming, it remains being and non-being in all instances and at all times through this great cycle. It eternally is, and yet is likewise eternally becoming. In its aspect of absolute motion, it transcends the temporary conditions of manifested matter, existing before, during, and after the conditioned appearances of form in the phenomenal world. So if we were to ask, what is it that remains? What is it that exists in this condition of pralaya? In this condition in which there is no silence, there is no ears to sense it, there is no sound, there is naught save ceaseless eternal breath. What is it which exists in this condition? Well, the absolute remains ever as it is in this condition, just as it was in the manifested world. Theosophy further teaches that consciousness is everywhere, that all matter in the manifested worlds is alive and endowed with life. And so when we consider this period of non-manifestation and we consider this period of seeming death, we recognize that our perception of dead matter is due to the limitations of our sensory faculties, and that in truth, everything in the universe, from the atom to the nebula, is conscious and alive. Therefore, death, and we could extend this perhaps to non-existence, is merely an illusion in the absolute sense. It has no ultimate reality. The reality which forms the bedrock of our existence is the trinity of life, consciousness, and motion. This existence is cyclic and eternal, and thus death is merely a doorway to a new beginning, in a new form, in this everlasting journey of ever becoming. And that is this cycle. That is what is referred to in this sloka as the eternal breath or motion. It shows that every period of non-existence is merely a doorway to a new beginning, a process of this ever becoming. As Gandalf says to the hobbit Pippin in The Lord of the Rings, death is just another path, one that we must all take. The grey rain curtain of this world rolls back, and all turns to silver glass, and then you see it. White shores, and beyond, a far green country under a swift sunrise. Just as is expressed in this poetic rendering of Tolkien, we also find this expressed in other words in The Secret Doctrine, the idea that everything is in motion. There is no true ending to life, but that every death or seeming ending is a pathway to a new and grand experience. This is only brought about through this process, through the cyclic process of Pralaya and Manvantara, both being the two sides of a single coin, both being intrinsic and necessary to the occurrence of the other. And so there is a clear relationship between consciousness and motion, or the great breath. Consciousness is forever producing activity and likewise manifesting motion. The American philosopher and psychologist and member of the Theosophical Society, William James, stated that all consciousness is motor. And thus does consciousness depend upon such constant change. Without this process, without the occurrence of the great breath, and without the cyclic occurrences of Pralaya and Manvantara, consciousness could not arise, evolution could not take place, we could not exist. And then to examine this sloka in the context of our own personal lives. We are each a center of consciousness in the universal mind. As such, we each have a particular function or role to play, a purpose to our existence upon this earth. Beyond the illusion of duality, each center is a part of the all. A relationship and interdependence exists between each and all. None is alone and separate in truth. The separateness we perceive is merely illusion, rooted in Maya, or our ignorance of the reality of things. All is one at the last. Each man and woman who exists, has existed, or will exist, is a center of consciousness with a precious part to play in the great cosmic drama, in the great breath, which we call life, constantly in motion, constantly in the process of evolution towards the higher life. The realization of this fact is the meaning behind the ancient imperative which was inscribed above the entrance to the temple of Apollo in Delphi, man, know thyself. With those brief remarks, I thank you all, and that concludes my talk.
Господин Ironside, огромное спасибо.
Dear Luke, dear Mr. Ironside, thank you very much. You have this incredible talent of concentration and this talent of being within this sloka. It is quite challenging, but you always perceive in these few lines and find a new sound to them. Today, you've told us about the new path, or new way, or new movement, which is vision or death. This new doorway, as you mentioned. It is a new state of Pralaya, new state of universe, which is mentioned in the sloka. Thank you very much for finding time for studying this material and being with us the seminars. And this is the second seminar when Luke participates as a speaker, and it is the second seminar when we have Blue Dog as Nidan of the day, and it is the energy of Luke's birthday, and this is how the energy, this dog's energy helps the young spirits to overcome obstacles and being in these energies and study and learn and help to all who is connected today. Thank you very much. And Today, we prepared a final presentation according to the materials of the second sloka, second stanza. Of course, we will try to concentrate on some key points of the sloka, and many speakers have already mentioned them. We will try to show you the visuals, the images who will help us to perceive, to go into these unmanifested states, which are impossible to express with words, but yet we need to draw correspondences with the human being. And now we will try to deal with this task.
Итак, станция 2, шлока 2,
So
где
here
было
we go. Stanza 2, Sloka 2. Oh, where was silence? Where were the ears to sense it? No, there was neither silence nor sound, not save ceaseless eternal breath, which knows itself not. So we will try to answer these questions. Where were the ears to sense the silence? And where was the sound? Of course, we refer to the system that Elena Petrovna Blavatsky gave us the planes of Genesis in order to see where we are. Let us talk about the silence. It is the plan of the gods, the second unmanifested plan of the absolute divine mind. The sound is on the plane of our prototypes or archetypes, and on the plane of material and formative, we have ears, and later on we will have the possibility to sense this sound, and the human who will be able to sense this sound. HPB says there was no sound nor silence. Why there were no silence? Because there was no sound, no ears. There was nothing but unbreakable breath, which knows itself not, which means that the universe was in the state of slumber, of sleep, in order to manifest it at the dawn of the birth of existence. There was only eternal breath, which is unbreakable because it never stops, and it starts when the divine breath starts to be absolute. It gives the impulse to the vibration of the sound. When the sound arises, then we have the word, then the ears,
и способны слышать
the
это все
speech, and the capacity to hear all this, which is a human being. After the breath becomes divine, it goes back to the absolute. Cosmogony goes through this path. That's why the infinity cannot understand the finite state. The breath of the one existence is unbreakable. We may talk about two aspects to cosmogony, which is the spiritual aspect and four material aspects of cosmogony, which are the movement, four manifested planes or material planes. The infinity cannot refer to the limit or conditioned. It does not know itself because there was no consciousness or object that could divide this one continuous unmanifested breath into manifested inhalation and exhalation to divide infinity. As absolute consciousness contains the knower, the cognizer, the thing known, and the self-knowledge, as all three are in it and all three are one. It corresponds to the concept of para-Brahman. We know that the eternal breath is infinite, limitless, not known, and not recognizable. It is limitless. For self-knowledge, it is necessary that consciousness and recognitions are realized. Both of these abilities should be understood, and in any case, they are finite, limited in relation to everything except para-Brahman. And therefore, the HPB's expression, eternal breath that doesn't know itself. So, para-Brahman is a Sanskrit term, a Vedantic term, which means beyond Brahma, the supreme and absolute principle, impersonal and nameless, referred to in the Vedas as that. which means the ever-existing root existence, unchanging and unknowable to our physical senses. But it is obvious and clearly perceptible to our spiritual nature. So if one is imbued with this basic idea and further concept of this omnipresent, all-encompassing and eternal character of it, just as the space, we had to emanate from it, and someday we must return to it. Then everything else, if we accept this concept, everything else is easy to assimilate and understand. Parabrahman or absolute are the supreme or universal spirit, the supreme being, the first cause or the supreme reason, the active reason comes out. As soon as we accept this first concept that Parabrahman can influence our spiritual nature and we can hear its and feel, sense this spiritual nature, then we can define that only one life reality is what Hindus call the Paramatma, which is the uh, eternal living reality, the highest spiritual essence, the supreme spirit, uh, the highest soul or oversoul, the fundamental principle of all things and phenomena. It is all prevailing and all present, everything that exists in its manifestation. So whatever is reason is Parabrahma, and this state of Paramatma as the active reason is Pratana as material reason. You see how the material reason, we may say that it is the fourth state. The Pratana is a negative cause, negative reason, accommodating the material and ideal spiritual cause. Here we are at the plane of archetypes, and where the prakasha or nirvana state is, where all phenomena, all things go after they go through the evolution path, and they become get back to the nominal state, the renewed. So the pratana itself, which is identical to Mula Prakriti, Akasha, and the matter, primary matter. So we've named the four reasons: the causeless cause, the primary cause, the cause active, the cause material. How can they be manifested on the physical plane of our existence? There is one condition all this is possible, which is upati. If upadana, the material cause of everything, it cannot be discussed, how can it be manifested? And if upati, as we understand, is the specific limiting substance, is the guide or the bearer of something less material that it is. As for example, the human body is the upati of its spirit, or the essay is upati of the light. Upati means something the force acts through. The word guide is used sometimes to express of the same idea. If we consider this cause as active cause, the matter will be upati, it acts through. Thus, we can define and consider three aspects of the active upati. For example, lower manas is upati through which the higher manas operate. Second is linga sharira, is the upati through which prana can operate. And number three, Sthula Sharira is the upati of all the principles operating on the physical plane. Same idea, in order to consider it in the concept of the building of the universe or the consciousness of the human, can be presented in the table where we see 7 human bodies. The lower manas is a party through the upper manas can operate, higher manas. Linga Sharira is a party through which prana can operate. And Sthula Sharira is a party of all the principles operating on the physical plane. Here is the true sevenfold which occurs on the physical manifested form. The consciousness, which is also sevenfold, its a priori concept contains limits and definition. Something to be aware. Second is someone to realize this something. So there should be someone to realize. And finally, the third component is self-knowledge. So the absolute consciousness englobes all these three principles, and all should be united. The united element is the space. It is out of dimensions in all senses, and it exists with their continuity. It means that the matter is indestructible and perpetual. This perpetual movement is the breath of the single element. So as soon as we define of the movement, which is the breathing of the single element out of any dimensions, we can define three key moments of the Sloka. First is the limitless continuity, existing together with the space and the indestructible matter. Second is a single eternal element or space outside dimensions. And third element is perpetual movement, which is the breath of a single element, absolute movement. Breathing never stops, even during the prior eternities. Have a look how they start to interact or merge. The first is the infinite duration is reflected or goes to the second and third, the movement and the eternal element, the breathing of this single eternal element. The second single eternal element or the space outside dimensions reflects in infinite duration with its movement which never stops in itself and which is the breathing. And finally, the perpetual movement, which never stops, is the breathing of the single element which reflects in this infinite duration and space. And all three are united. So in the further combination, potentially creating new forms of this first trinity will create new forms out of and all substances of the new elements, the light of these combinations of interactions or combining of these elements will create their own forms. Here are these three which merge in one state. And from this point, from the plane of archetypes, they will continue creating new forms out of this new form. The first threefold, first trinity of the elements I've mentioned. The breathing of the one existence, the causeless cause, or all being, as opposed to all that, is which is Brahma or the universe. We may call him the four-faced God. The cause is conductive, but not ideal. From this come the forces that will create, or they become the real cause on the material plane. Thus, Elena Petrovna gives us a concept when Brahma is this and Parabrahman is that. It means that Brahma as not ideal cause, and because ideal cause of Parabrahman has this power, and the forces come from it, forces which will create the real reason or cause on the material plane. Brahma is everything. So when we say that self-cognition is the third element, the uniting element of the three, is this a real material cause. Padana, as self-knowledge, is the material cause. It is the material cause of pratana. It contains spiritual and material cause. Paramatma is often used as a synonym for Atma. And when we talk about Pratana, we may say that it is like recognition for the human being. When the recognition occurs, the recognition of unfolding, unpacking, when the opening perceives, pierces at the essence of anything, we see the opening of this essence. This is penetration and recognition. These two elements, self-knowledge and recognition, these two abilities are both limited in relation to any subject other than Parabrahman. We are talking about the unique divine essence, but to be the limited senses. It is the unconsciousness and immobility. This self-existent divine essence, we can use it talking about the following three. The unconsciousness of absolute consciousness, which Helena Petrovna tells us about this notion. Second is unconsciousness. And HPB says that the third element of our consciousness is not a kind of consciousness which is able to be distinguished from the first from the second, is the key point of this sloka. Yet every person has the power that can provide us with the real knowledge, the power of perceiving, understanding the truth, which helps us to perceive the eternal
Вот в
through
этом
our
своей...
own experience. And in this ability, in this capacity, the human being is higher than God, because nobody has the possibility to understand the eternal through experience. We can use our own power, our own force. We can study all that without losing our path. What gives the force not to stay astray from the path? Uh, what is the power of living the truth? And in Sanskrit, there is an unique, exceptional word to define it, which means satyagraha, which satya means the truth, and graha, perseverance, which means to hold fast to the truth, or to hold on to truth, or the power of truth. Satyagraha is the ability to grasp the truth and keep it, to grasp and keep. And this ability, by distinguishing, understanding of the potential spiritual essence, we can grasp this truth of satyagraha and keep it. The human being has this ability. And this strength, how does it happen? Elena Ivanovna Roerich describes it in the eternity. The second sloka, second stanza tells about it. Yet Elena Ivanovna continues. Eternally moving, eternally striving, eternally stretching upward, eternally showing vigilance, determined, the thread of the beautiful mother of the world, manifesting the armor of infinite beauty, striking the darkness of ignorance. The breath of cosmos is indestructible in everything. The manifestation of planetary periods depends on cosmic waves. Therefore, those who deny the connection of the spirit with cosmic whirlwinds do not tread the path of knowledge. Action is our eternal and most faithful companion, and the predestination of our karma cannot be hidden. The Creator and His creations are constant. Agni Yoga claims that a powerful, all-encompassing cosmic force of fire acts in the world space, the omnipresent, all-creating basis of all energies, but it can also manifest itself as a destructive element. All visible and invisible phenomena of the world, organic and inorganic forms of nature, are permeated with the element of spatial fire. Some always strive and cannot exist without this uplifting business. We show that they belong to the element of fire. Take a closer look at them, and you will always find fiery power. Verily, they move the world. Why? Because these fire entities, these people who have this fire element, or they feel it, or they reveal this energy themselves, they can hear the mystical sound of the silence. How? by the fiery state of primordial energy. Elena Petrovna in The Voice of Silence writes, the indestructibility of the eternal breath is the continuity of the unceasing eternal movement of the unmanifest, which manifests itself in the beginning or by silence, then by sound, then by hearing ears, and then a person will be able to hear the voice of silence or the voice of the higher self. Then only can you become the heavenly wanderer, the one who tramples down the winds rushing through the waters and doesn't touch the waves with your feet. That is, you will become a real septenary, or conscious, connected with the three higher worlds of the monad. Next thing Elena Petrovna talks about is listing of those seven. Before you stand on the top rung of the ladder of physical sounds, you must hear the voice of God within yourself in seven differences. And then she gives these seven differences, these seven bodies. The first is the symbol of Saturn. It's our physical body, the manifested body. Elena Petrovna in the Voice of Silence tells about it that it is the first similar to a nightingale singing, which sings a farewell song to his friend. Who is he singing this song to? To faith, because there is a trust which is higher than faith. The one who rejected the blind faith and trusted, and this nightingale sound lifted him. We have to say goodbye to faith and the dance flame because we have to feel the trust. These things are different. And only then we can unite them and move on to the subtle world. The second body sounds like a silver symbol of an unearthed spirit, awakening the twinkling stars. It's moon energy when the astral body, when the trust was confided, and we have this energy. We are talking about the moon, the astral body, twinkling stars is the silver symbol of an extraterrestrial spirit. We touch this energy, and then the third occurs, the one which can, by the melodic lament of the spirit of the oceans, captivated in its shell. Here, the vigilance of the soul occurs. It's the planet Sun, the vigilance of the soul, and see how the ethereal counterpart, the planet Sun, is like the melodic lament of the spirit of the oceans captivated in itself. Can you imagine this point of the silence in the sun symbol is captivated by itself, and this is the twin of the human. This is the vigilance of our soul, and it gives the power, and the fourth state occurs. It is the singing of the lute, which corresponds to the concentration of the mind. The main planet is Jupiter, and the fourth state, lower manners, where Elena Petrovna writes that the singing of the lute or concentration of the mind here is described. The fifth occurs afterwards, and it will penetrate you like the sound of a bamboo flute, the attainment of wisdom. The higher man, the fifth and sixth principles merge in order to attain the wisdom. The symbol is Venus, fifth principle, and exactly here occur the merging of the fifth and sixth principles, transforming the sound to passing through the Mercury in the sixth. This is the gold trumpet sound of Gautier. Here, only one is left, the seventh, and it will sweep by like a rumble of the thundercloud. The seventh will absorb all sounds, they will die, and they will no longer be heard. The symbol of spirit, the planet Mars, and this is the true septenary merged into a single state where everything is dissolved, and then the voice of silence arises when everything disappears and it rose. Here on the scheme, we can see how one occurred from another, one came out from another, how the Saturn, the physical body, and we can consider the scheme top to bottom and from bottom to top. These two states where we see that we go up the ladder. So, where was the silence? Where was uh, the sound? There was no silence because there was no sound. The seventh spirit of the completion of Pralaya came, which absorbed all sounds, and they dissolved or died, and were no longer would be heard. And this corresponds to the seventh period of Pralaya in the second stanza, second sloka, which we are studying now. When the whole personality is defeated and thrown down to the feet of the teacher, then the disciple emerges. One is identified with the one and abides in him. Your voice merges with the voice of the teacher, and the voice of silence begins to sound. Then the truth itself shines in silence. Here is the conclusion, the final key moment of the whole second sloka, second stanza. Today, the 26th of February, on the 26th of February, uh, 1924, Mahatma Mori provided us with secret doctrine through HPB, who gave the teaching of Mahatma through Roerich family, tells us the following this day. In the name of Christ, in the name of Buddha, in the name of Maitreya, in the name of Muhammad, in the name of Solomon, in the name of the great teachers and prophets, in the name of the brotherhood of earth and heaven, accept what you wish, not to harm and not to kill, but to comprehend the light. I wash my spirit with the miracle of achievement, and in silence I will receive the radiance of truth. Here, what we have studied and we approach to the silence, to the voice of silence, we try to answer the questions of the second sloka and to find the key moment, the key point that the silence can be in silence, the shining of truth can be received and accepted. This is the seventh period of Pralaya, second sloka, second stanza. Thank you very much for your attention. It was not easy, but now I'd like to hear the comments of the scientific research group, and I invite you to share your opinion. And I invite our partner from Helsinki, the Theosophical Society, Finland, Ritva Kelenulahti. Please, the floor is yours. You're welcome to share your feedback.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much. There is so lot of knowledge. Oh, wonderful. But it's nice because I thinking just the Voice of Silence book, what's are there. It's nice that you told just because I think there is 6 parameters, and how we can touch it silence if we can walk it this way path, used all this teaching what HPP said, and how we can use meditation, what we can do in practical way. I think so. This is so high abstract theoretical things. I try to come to here and what to mean this today, and that is reason I like to just Voice of Silence book, because there is practical knowledge. But I want to say only thank you very much all presentation. That is my opinion today to you. Thank you very much.
Dear Ritva, thank you very much for being with us today. It is especially important today. It is very important that you were so sensitive and appreciated our. And we invite the member of a research group from Paris. Please share your opinion? How did you find out today's seminar? Please give us some of your feedback.
I loved this seminar. I always love your seminars, you know, because you give us the opportunity to have very diverse and complementary visions of a study, a research, which should be really more and more profound, especially in these troubled times, you know. And it's always a very special occasion for me to contribute to listening to your proposition about such important terms as sound, consciousness, pradhana, things that are really at the root of our being. And I thank you very much for all these wonderful contribution which we can share with people. I have in the last session, people asked me, does the great breath has a sound? And we have here kind of answer. There was neither silence nor sound. And this is a very good subject of meditation. Thank you very much to all of you.
Dearest Bridget, thank you very much. Yet I invite the Theosophical Society of Russia. We have two representatives of Anaconda Lodge and the Resuscitation Lodge, Tatiana Kotechkina. Please, the floor is yours. Saltasky Cry, Velikorev City. The floor is yours. Dear brothers and sisters, today the seminar was amazing. The lecturers remind me of a holographic picture. We started to study the Secret Doctrine in 1991. And again, I realized that it is important to repeat these logos, especially in the form that you suggest. Every representative, every participant told us about something that was close to him. Yet we assimilate the synthesis. And I would like to welcome all and congratulate you all for participation, especially in your connections between Agni Yoga and the Secret Doctrine by Elena Petrovna Blavatsky. And for those who hasn't studied the Secret Doctrine yet, I would like to give you an analogy with soundless sound. Our pulsar, our heart is working this way, and this microcosm helps us realize how the Pralayam Inventara pulsation occurs, which works despite anything. We cannot sense it, we cannot hear it. We need to use a special device in order to hear our heartbeat. This analogy might be useful for those who are newcomers, who do not know how to use the symbols. You should use analogies to realize this connection of micro and macro worlds. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your comment, dear Tatiana. And now we are welcoming our friend from the United States of America, Michelina Foster. Please, if you are here, if you can hear us, if we have internet, we would be happy to hear a couple of words from you, your feedback. How did you find our seminar today? How did you perceive it? Whether it was clear, whether it was interesting, or maybe it was a little bit inspirational, or maybe something was missing. Please share your opinion with us. The floor is yours, dear Michelina.
Okay, can you hear me? I think the speakers are wonderful. Each one of us is like a reflection of the divine. Each one of us has our own point of view. And when we learn to combine our points of view, we become a hierarchy. But when each one of us has our own point of view, we each see the truth that is within us. So we can see as far as we are able to perceive because of our development. As we hold on to the truth within each of us and persevere, as you said in your talk, that expands this range of consciousness within each of us. And we each begin to expand to see what all others see. And as we expand throughout ourselves and our people around us and people of like vibration and frequencies, we begin to see further. This gives us the sensory of the ears to hear, the eyes to see. And as humans, we have the hands to work and the feet to travel. So in our journey together, we experience one another. We experience our own truth, because my truth for my journey is not going to be your truth for your journey. Each one of us has our own, and yet the truth is one in the absolute. And I thank everyone here for the beauty of their words and their thoughts. Thank you.
Michelina, dear, thank you very much for your input. In her comments, Elena Petrovna writes that when the different sounds will be absorbed and the sound of silence will occur, will become the eternal wanderers, because thus we will reveal the new abilities through this silence, the sound of silence.
We are very glad to see you, Mr. Pandey, in our seminar. We would like to hear a few words from you regarding this seminar. Please say a few words.
Thank you, Brother Vladimir and Sister Soulika. First of all, I extend my warm greetings to all the participants and organizers. I compliment all the speakers for bringing out various points, important points in this sloka. And it has been really very fruitful and informative session as usual. I would like to add a few points only concerning limitations of time. Blavatsky in her commentary has made one remark, nimitta. Brahma, or the manifested cosmic logos, is nimitta, she says in this commentary. Nimitta means instrumental or agent. He is not the cause, the real cause of creation. The potencies come out of him. And if we see teaching in Bhagavad Gita of Krishna, when Arjuna is reluctant to fight the war because he fears that he's going to kill many people, many close relations and relatives, Krishna tells him he has to become only nimitta. Everything is already, nature is deciding, it is working. All the attributes of the nature, gunas, they are working within themselves, by themselves. And Arjuna is a fighter, he is to be only nimitta, instrument, cause. He's not actor, he is only nimitta. And that is why in meditation or in yoga, it is recommended we have to forget about that we are actor. We are not actor. We have to be nimitta. So this nimitta word is very important. We have to be only instrumental, agent. By this process, if we realize that we are only nimitta, then we reach a consciousness which is akin to the universal soul, Paramatma, that soul. That means we are egoless at that time. We are not feeling we are doing anything. So that is one point. And second point, she has brought out very important thing, that example of oxygen and hydrogen. If you see oxygen and hydrogen, both individually have a property of combustion. They will burn, but when they combine to form a water, the quality becomes just opposite. Water is used to quench the flame, fire. So water, their existence in water is more real, more useful when they merge. So this gives us a lesson that when we merge all the principles in one principle, then we are a real being, which is no being. And another point it is brought out that concrete consciousness cannot be predicated from the absolute consciousness. This is also a very important point, that whatever we are thinking in concrete terms, even by lower mind, we have to keep in mind that we are always connected to the universal consciousness in which we are there. We are never separate. Though some teachings said we are separate, but we are never separate. Even when we are thinking some bad thing, we are not separate from this universal consciousness, or from Krishna consciousness, or from Christ consciousness. If we keep that in mind, then probably evil thought will go automatically. Then another point belongs over absolute consciousness with absolute darkness. This is also a very important point, and which our words are unable to express. This only we can perceive internally, that what is absolute consciousness, and the medium of perception can be only our limited consciousness. So with these points, I thank again all the speakers and organizers for the excellent session of this Sloka, or Stanza 2, Sloka 2 of Secret Doctrine today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Well, I suggest concluding, saying the final words to the seminar and giving the floor to Vladimir Vasilievich Yary, Adamant Lodge, the President of Theosophical Society of Russia. Greetings to everybody. Again, I would like to thank you for your work, for your contribution, for your studying of the materials. It is not work, it is self-research for us, the self-insight, referring to the material that we are supposed to study. This is the practical application of the meditation. And what is important? What is important to note? What detail? The point is that considering all the consciousness, the realization, the insights that we have while studying the material, going deep into material, the most important is the limitless of this eternal breath in its absolute. And another point, another important detail is that the space as it is infinite, is limitless, is boundless. And it is the essence in itself. And it can be compared to the state of meditation to which we should go to and plunge into. And I would say that when we go into meditation, this state should be constant. And in this continuity, in the real changes may occur, the changes of our mind's dimension, which whatever was told by Elena Petrovna Blavatsky, lets us understand the dimensions, the scale. And these dimensions, as a matter of fact, are the civilizations. We may read the secret doctrine and be in the state of our minds of a three-dimensional state. But the time has 4 dimensions. So we can continue being materialistic because 3 dimensions without perceiving, without piercing into the dimension of time, is the understanding of this quality, of this property. I would say Brahma, because Brahma personalizes the time, because it is a form, the shape, and any form of consciousness is a certain category of dimension, and the higher form of consciousness. Time is Brahman, and the higher emanation is Parabrahman. Its state has multi dimensions. But this multitude is expressed in Brahma just as dimension. And in our solar system, if we are talking about the planet Earth and our solar system, is important. I'm just trying to be practical, to lead it to some practical application of these important things told about the stanzas, about the ability, about potential abilities of the mind, of the higher consciousness, supreme consciousness, so that our mind becomes active, efficient, so that we can merge with the cosmic mind, that cosmic consciousness. But for this, we need to reveal the potentiality of the second stanza, second sloka. This potentiality should be felt in ourselves. This is what I wish to all of you. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much. And we see Konstantin Zaitsev on Akata Lodge, Russia. Please, you're welcome. Hello, dear friends. I just wanted to thank all the lecturers, all the participants who joined, who connected today without going personal. And I would like to wish to all of us to meditate, to wish the peace for people and between peoples and nations. I am sure that different groups already do this kind of meditations. Let us meditate on peace too. Thank you very much. This is exactly what we've been doing for 2 hours, thinking about peace, about love, and working this idea of the world. We're trying to expand it and send it to everybody. We hope that this real meditation will be useful. The real meditation as the conscious action and the peak of action, these difficult times, and we are living in very hard times now, with lots of controversial information in the internet. But we should all concentrate on pure peace, pure voice of silence, pure love. And by concentrating on the secret doctrine, and the secret doctrine is the highest truth, we concentrate our world on the manifestation of the highest peace, highest love, and we hope it will manifest, unfold outside in our reality. Thank you very much. Today we were working with interpreters Olga Tomchevskina and Maria Ponomareva. Thank you very much. You contributed a lot today and defined the way to study stanza to Sloka 2 for the whole world. Today we had many participants from different countries. We're happy that they had the opportunity to hear and understand every participant, every lecturer. Dear friends, congratulations and gratitude for your being with us and these energies. We thank all all speakers, lecturers, the members of our scientific research group who studied this difficult material together and provide us with their feedback and input in the end of the seminar. It's very important to understand this material and to dare to suppose that these seminars will help to every one of us to prepare our own space of mind so that the cause of the sound or the voice of silence will be heard by every one of us, which will lead to new opportunities, new abilities, and new possibilities to apply this knowledge to our everyday life. Thank you very much. We will be posting our video soon on our site. We will register Theosophical quiz, the answers to the seminar questions, which also will be published on our YouTube channel. We thank all those helping to organize our seminar, the technical support, which was so efficient and put so much effort into organization. Thank you all for whatever you do for Theosophy in the whole world. By doing this work, Theosophical work, we bring peace and love and light in the whole world. Please share your feedbacks, opinions, suggestions and comments. The next virtual class to research group will be in March, the 26th of March. We will study the second stanza of the third sloka. Thank you very much. It's easy to be together. Light, peace, and love to everybody.
The Secret Doctrine by Blavatsky. Dedicated to all true Theosophists. Book of the Third Millennium.
Blavatsky only knew.